very much. Well, this is my 37th wedding anniversary. It's hard to believe 37 years ago we were heading down the road going on vacation on our honeymoon to Florida, and it's been a great 37 years, and 4 daughters, 12 grandchildren, a 13th on the way, and so it's been a real blessing. We have, as long as we're talking about marriage, there's a commitment you make in marriage, for better or for worse, for rich or for poor, in sickness and in health, and those words mean something. Just as those words in our Constitution mean something, and we abide by them, no matter how we feel, no matter what the weather is like, and we stay committed, and that's how you have 37-year marriages that last, by the way. And also, stay married; it gets better. Stay married; it gets better. So it's a pleasure. Let me real quickly. Some of you have heard my story. I was 50 years old. I'm 58 years old. I was 50 years old when I was sitting home reading the newspaper, and our city council was going to raise our taxes by nearly 13%. Now, the way I define that, because they were going to add a tax or a fee on your utility bill, which was equal to about 9%, and other fees, and then they're going to raise the levy by 4%. And I was greatly disturbed after reading this article. How can anything go up 13%? I was self-employed for 22 years. And if I raise my product in any one year or at any one time by 13%, I don't have any customers. Plain and simple. I don't know how many of you sell a product, or you vend something, or you're a salesperson, or you have to receive funds for something you're vending. And what happens is you have to always have your product at the price that your customers are willing to pay. And I felt that government was asking a greater price than what I was willing to pay. Well, the problem with government is they can make you pay it. They can make you pay it. They don't have to necessarily ask your permission. They take the electeds, and they make that decision. They're told a story about why they have to, and then they do it. So I called the finance director of our city, and I said, "Are you really going to raise my taxes by nearly 13%?" And I explained to her how I added up all of the fees in this article about the city budget. And she says, "You're the first one to call. You're the first one to figure it out. And why don't you run for mayor?" Well, I never thought of it. Never thought of running for mayor. I was always politically interested. I was always actively engaged. I was thrilled in 1971 when I was given the right to vote as a 19-year-old young person. 19 years old, I could vote. If you remember, we couldn't vote until we were 21. And so in 71, I voted, I think it was 72 election, I voted my first time. And so it was a thrill to be able to go and vote, you know, as a 20-year-old young man. And I've taken that vote very seriously my entire life. And so, anyways, I told our community that we didn't have to have these kind of increases. We could reduce our government, we could reduce debt, and we could privatize services. Now, to an area in northern Wisconsin, Douglas County, here I'm a card-carrying, open conservative Republican. And I come from a very Democrat area, an area that voted 65% for Barack Obama in the last election. And we ran against an incumbent. And we won. And we won with 58% of the vote. And one of the ads that I thought was so funny was, my opponent ran an ad that was just cute. It said, she always used my name in her advertising, and I could never understand why, because that's just a no-no in politics. Don't promote your opponent's name. And so it said, Dave Ross, and she often called me Mr. Ross, and she was a couple years older than I am. Mr. Ross has no experience in government. And then the rest of her ad went, I was on the city council 11 years, I'm the mayor, and I'm on this board, and I'm on this committee. A week later, we ran an ad that said, Dave Ross has no experience in government. And that's exactly what you want in your next mayor. and we had a mess in the city of Superior. And I've told the story around the state for now almost 2 years. And we had a landfill that was $1 million in deficit, a golf course that was losing money, a self-insured health care account that was $1.25 million in deficit. We owed a liability, a post-retirement pension liability to the state of Wisconsin of over $5 million. And we were heading in the wrong direction. Can you see why they had to try to raise taxes by 13%? It was a mess. Well, I was told during the debates, during that campaign, you know, Dave, you just don't understand government. Wait till you get here, you'll get the reality, and you'll be doing the same thing. My campaign manager said to me, Dave, if you don't do what you promised, I'm coming after you, and I'm going to be your own worst enemy. Now, this guy's more conservative than any of you in this room.
Try us.
Try us. And so he said, I'm coming after you. Well, here's what I did, and this is the record. This is the actual record I had. We've shrunk government by over 10%. It would be 15 if it wasn't for a stormwater utility forced onto us by the Clean Water Act, and cities all over the state are being forced to put in stormwater utilities. You know the tax on rain, you've heard about that. And so because we have to meet certain standards for how stormwater goes into our creeks and our rivers, we have to reduce suspended solids and other things, and so that's a mandate. But anyways, we shrunk government by 10%. We've shrunk indebtedness by 20. Now, you might say, well, you know, that doesn't sound all that great. Well, let me tell you, we had $28 million in GO debt, general obligation debt. That's debt borrowed against nothing. We have other debt in enterprise zones, such as building a cell in a landfill. That's debt. But that's debt for a return on an asset that's going to give us dollars back. GO debt is just spent money, somewhat like the federal government. Today we have $21 million in debt. $7 million we have paid off in indebtedness for the city of Superior. And this is in a day and age in which they're saying cities are broke, we don't have any more money, you need to give us more money or we're not going to survive. We've managed to create excess revenue. And let me tell you a story about how we've done it many ways, but let me just tell you one. We had a golf course, and it's the smallest of the story because we've had better revenue and other things. We had a golf course that was losing $66,000 a year. Now you might say, somebody said, well, in a $25 million budget, who cares if you're losing $66 million a year? I care. Because guess what? If you owned our golf course, you'd want a return on investment, an ROI, right? That's not return only incumbents. If you talk to the politicians, ROI is return only. It's return on investment. And so what we did is we put the golf course up for bid, and we eliminated the 35 city employees that ran that golf course. And tell me that wasn't a fight. But it was best for the taxpayers, and not best for the union, and not best for the special interests that had an interest in keeping that golf course under city control. That golf course, at its peak, gave us a check, after all expenses, of over $200,000 in net profit. By the way, our landfill losing $1 million a year, at one point before the tipping fee was enacted by the state of Wisconsin, we made over $1 million in net profit. Right now it's down to $400,000 in net profit. You wonder where I got the money to pay down debt? Can you see? Reducing government. A lot of politicians are talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. It's the most overused line that one could ever hear. In fact, it's used by politicians as just a way to get into office because polling tells you if you talk about fraud, waste, and abuse, people will vote for you. You know that? If you just talk about it, they'll vote for you. How about the guy who's done it? I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually done all the things we've talked about. We eliminated $3.5 million in waste in city government. $3.5 million. And did it come with big things and small things? Absolutely. Little things like a city calendar. We spent $7,800 a year putting out a calendar. And I saw it in the budget and I said, that's gone. It's a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe the fury that caused because guess what? City councilors love their picture on the calendar and they can use the calendar, hand out to constituents and get what? Votes. Almost like that map of Wisconsin that's being used quite heavily by politicians. Printed on our tax dollars, their stamp on it, and then handed out as if we're paying for their electioneering. We eliminated that calendar. Those are little things that we've done. But we've even done larger things, privatizing engineering. Instead of having a city engineer, we turned it over to a private company. In the first year, we saved about $60,000 in net costs for engineering for the city of Superior. And I can go on and on. I can literally tell you 30 stories about how we've driven down the cost of government. Well, let's talk about the levy, and I'll end with one more comment. We have raised our levy 1.75% on average over 8 years. And compare that to, say, Milwaukee County, which has kept their levy down pretty aggressively. They have only gone up 2.4% a year over 8 years. We're 1.75%. We actually have a better record than Milwaukee County. And by the way, a substantially better record than the rest of the state. Our own county, Douglas County, has doubled the levy in 12 years. So you can tell how aggressively government is going after your pocketbook. Now let me end with the moral issues. One of the things people wonder, why are we so passionate about family and life? And you know, a lot of people who don't understand those issues don't understand our passion. They don't understand that this is the core of who we are as Americans. It's our core. And I don't believe it's a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian issue at all. I believe that protection of life and the preservation of traditional marriage is a faith and a value issue. It's a moral issue. And so I believe strongly, and it's a rock bed belief of mine and my wife, we share it both, that life begins at conception and goes till natural death. And marriage is between one man and one woman in a committed relationship called marriage, which will raise the next generation of kids so they can do the same. So that we can see that beautiful generation of families move forward. Our state's in trouble, our country is in trouble, and we need to elect people who are going to be people of their word and are going to do what they said when they were running. So that's my little pitch, my little intro.